Welcome to the vlog. It's been raining a lot lately, so I thought I'd make a quick video about how to ride through the rain. So the first thing to think about is what to wear. One caveat: if you live in a cold country, what I'm gonna say is not gonna help you because I live in the Philippines, and in the Philippines it is hot, so we don't layer up a lot. I don't layer up at all. I bring a jersey and that's it. That said, if it's raining here, it's a good idea to bring a windbreaker. Something that can fold small enough to fit in your pocket. The windbreaker is good primarily because sometimes if you go up the mountains, it can get pretty cold. And like I said, I'm from the Philippines. It's really hot here and I don't do well with the cold. So it can get a little bit cold for me, a little bit chilly for me, especially during the downhills. So windbreaker helps. And you want a windbreaker that is of high visibility, like a high-vis windbreaker. Maybe something colorful. You don't really need to go neon, but I don't know, something red, orange maybe. So that helps. If you don't have a windbreaker and you think it's gonna be chilly on the downhill, I suggest you either put a plastic bag inside your jersey. You can put it inside your jersey, put a plastic bag or a newspaper, and that'll help a little bit. That'll help with the wind chill on the downhill. Back to visibility. Whenever I go cycling here in the Philippines, I usually have lights with me. I don't usually use a front light, but I should. But generally speaking, I have a backlight. A lot of my rides start early in the morning when it's still dark and the sun isn't up, so I keep that light on. But also, there are many cases here where there's torrential rain and visibility in front of you is not great. The light allows other people to see you, like cars, so that's important. One other thing to consider in terms of clothing is wearing clear colored shades, the ones that don't darken, just clear shades, because when you're going downhill and there's droplets of water, they can hit you in the eye and the face also, and it can make going downhill kinda difficult. So consider wearing clear shades unless it starts to fog. If it starts to fog, probably a good idea to ditch it. Now let's get to the riding. When it's raining, the roads tend to become slippery. Here in Cebu, Philippines, especially if you plan to go through the inner roads, there's a lot of moss that accumulates on the sides of the road, like a green film of moss, and they tend to be quite slippery, especially if it rains. They're a little bit slippery even if it's a dry out or moist out, but if it rains, it's especially slippery. In fact, I have a video that I just recently posted where I was cycling and I made the mistake of going too close to the side of the road where the moss accumulated, and it was steep going up, and my bike slipped from under me and then I fell on the concrete. Fortunately, it wasn't anything serious, but it got really slippery. Even when I stood up, I started sliding down. So the roads can get slippery. So one other thing to keep in mind is if you're going downhill and going through corners, you want to go slower than your usual speed, especially if you're like me who likes going downhill and likes to take corners relatively fast. I don't do anything crazy, but I also don't go down that slow. But when it's raining, it's a good idea to hold that back, hold the speed back a little bit, use the brakes. Better safe than sorry. And then when on the flats, one thing to keep in mind is that water accumulates on the road sometimes and you can see puddles. Be careful when you go through the puddles because sometimes puddles hide potholes. It just looks like a regular road, but it could be a pothole in there. And if you're going at speed and you suddenly hit the pothole, you might crash or fall off your bike. Something to keep in mind when going through puddles of water. One thing you might want to consider also for your bike in terms of an upgrade for your bike would be to add a fender. It's not for everyone, but honestly, during rainy rides, I wish my bike had a fender in the back and in the front because sometimes the the water from the front also hits my legs, but the water in the back tends to spray the back of my shirt, generally making laundry a little bit difficult. Depending on the quality of the fender, it's not going to stop all of the dirt and mud and water from hitting the back of your shirt, but it's going to help. The really good ones will stop everything and you won't even see any piece of dirt on you, but consider getting a fender for your bike. Here's the next tip. After a rain ride, your chain, your cassette, your crankset, it's gonna accumulate dirt and grime. So after a rain ride, what I like to do is I like to degrease it, wash the chain, wash the cassette, wash the crank, just get all the oil and dirt out. And then after I clean it up, then I put lube onto it again, just to make sure it runs smoothly. The dirt and grime, if you don't clean it, especially after a dirty rain ride, it's gonna eat up your chain, it's gonna eat up your cassette, and those things are pretty expensive to replace, especially if you go on a lot of rain rides. And if you do go on a lot of rain rides, consider having your bike checked by a mechanic. Maybe look at the interior of the frame, make sure nothing's rusting, especially for those steel bikes, or some sort of corrosion accumulating, because if there's water in the frame that doesn't let out, that can't be good for your frame. I think there's like some sort of spray, some sort of formula that you can have sprayed inside your frame that can keep your frame life long. Another tip is, when riding in the rain, if you are in a group of cyclists, you're gonna find this out really quickly. Because if you are cycling near the cyclist in front of you, under the rain, or over puddles of water, that water is gonna spray back at you and hit you in the face. So you might wanna keep your distance. You're gonna learn that real quick. And then back to the bike. One way to give your bike more traction in the rain, especially when it gets slippery, is to lower the PSI of your tires. I use a gravel bike, generally 700 by 40, and at my weight, I generally pump it up to 40 PSI if I want to do a road ride. But if it rains, I deduct 5 to 10 PSI from that. I'll run it anywhere from 30 to 35 PSI, and that just gives me a lot more traction, especially in the rain, especially if I'm going up a hill and it's raining. So consider doing that. If you do have interior tubes though, you're more likely to get a pinch flat if you lower your PSI. So experiment, do what's comfortable for you. And lastly, sometimes when it's raining outside, I just don't go out and bike. Actually, the truth is, more often than not, if I wake up and it rains, 90% chance I'm not gonna go out there. But that's just me. Some people like biking in the rain. So if you have any more tips, if you're listening to this and might have thought about something and want to help people, want to help new cyclists, write your tips in the comments. I'd love to hear them. I might learn something. I love learning things. That's it. No boring days. Subscribe. New videos soon.